This is the video log 4 of Mice and Men, and it is theme. The theme, there are multiple themes throughout this, and one of the themes is dreams and hopes, and that one example is when Lenny and Curly's wife are in the barn together, and she is talking about how she could have been an actress. She went on to her story quickly before she could be interrupted. Another time I met a guy, and he was in pictures. Went out into the Riverside Dance Palace with him. He says he was going to put me in the movies. Says I was natural. Soon as he got back to Hollywood, he was going to write me about it. She looked closely at Lenny to see whether she was impressing him. I never got that letter, she said. I always thought my old lady stole it. Well, I wasn't going to stay no place where I couldn't get nowhere or make something of myself, and where they stole your letters. I asked her if she stole it too, and she says no. So I married Curly. Met him out to the Riverside Dance Palace that same night, she demanded. You listening? Her dream, and that was, she dreamed that she could have been actress, but she didn't get to because of her old lady, which is also her mom. Friendship is a really good example of friendship through this book is George and Lenny's friendship. And one part is, or its question is when, I think it was Slim who goes, I ain't never seen two people, I've never seen two guys go around together, or something like that. And George goes, well, what's wrong with that? And he got really defensive, but they were just, and he's like, well, I've been with him since it's just been those two since they were kids, because they were friends. They've been like that for forever, for as long as they can remember. And anywho. Another one is isolation, and an example of that is when Crooks is isolated from everybody else because everyone else is in the bunkhouse together, and Crooks has his own little area in his own room, which is like outside. Crooks, the Negro stable buck, had his bunk in the harness room, a little shed that leaned off the wall of the barn. On one side of the little room there was a square 4-paned window, and on the other a narrow plank door leading into the barn. Crooks's bunk was a long box filled with straw on which his blankets were flung. On the wall by the window there were pegs on which hung broken harness in process of being mended, strips of new leather, and under the window itself a little bench for leather working tools, curved knives, and needles on balls of linen thread, and a small hand riveter. On pegs were also pieces of harness, a split collar with a horsehair stuffing sticking out. Crooks had his apple box over his bunk, and in it a range of medicine bottles, both for himself and for the horses. There were cans of saddle soap and a drippy can of tar with its paintbrush sticking over the edge. And scattered about the floor were a number of personal possessions. For being alone, Crooks could leave his things about, and being a stable buck and a cripple, he was more permanent than the other men, and he had accumulated more possessions than he could carry on his back. And he's isolated because he's alone. He has nobody else, and nobody else is going to be with him because he's black, and they think that, oh, if we're with him, then something bad's going to happen to them, basically. Freedom is another example that I could do is going back to when Lenny and Curly's wife were in the barn together, and she was trying to get free, and that was another time where she wanted to be free because her feet battered on the hay and she writhed to be free because she knew something bad would have happened had she stayed there, and something bad didn't end up happening. She ended up getting her neck broken and she was killed, and she wanted to be free. Justice, an example of justice through this is at the end of the book, the justice that is served to Lenny for killing Curly's wife. There's justice served at the end, and I'll have to read the book to find out what that is, but there's justice served. Violence. There's definitely violence throughout this. There's a fight between Lenny and Curly because Curly was basically beating Lenny. Like, they got into a fight over something, and Lenny stood up and grabbed his hand and crushed all the bones in his hand. Every single bone in one of his hands. And that's one instance of violence. Another one is when people are being killed. Another one. Weakness. Things being broken. People being killed. And that is the theme of Of Mice and Men.